Good afternoon. Okay, it's late, you just had lunch. My presentation is very short. First of all, this is only a start of a research paper, so we are just contextualizing where this research is going to lead. Just gender equality is a very important and becoming more mainstream in the narratives of many countries and also in the Gulf. The Millennium Development Goals focused on a framework with 8 objectives, looking at improving the poverty or ending it in many countries. The third goal of the Millennium Development Goals talks about promoting gender equality. This has turned from trying to promote gender equality into actually achieving gender equality and empowering women. Many countries have ratified this goals, 193, Bahrain being one of these countries that have done so. They are the most comprehensive goals to be achieved for many nations. According to the World Bank report 2016 about women law and business, or women business and the law, there are many legal gender differences in countries. I think about 943 laws go against women. The 2016 reports that gender differences are actually widespread. In 155 out of the 173 economies the report focuses on, there is at least one law that impedes women economic opportunity and therefore the gender equality. In 100 economies, women face many job restrictions, legal laws that prevent women from attending higher education or tertiary education, fewer women working, fewer women being self-employed or innovating or getting their own business. And since 2004 up to 2016, 65 economies had introduced 94 reforms. In Bahrain in particular, we've had many reforms that I'll speak about shortly, but I'd like to just point out that gender imbalances have many implications. First, that gender equality is important because it's a human right for women. And I think it's about time at least that narrative is sounding back and forth globally. But we have a long way to go. Women's rights in terms of equal pay and especially in decision making are really yet to materialize, because we've done a lot of advances in terms of violence. In Bahrain, for example, this year we've witnessed the unification of the family law, which gives women and children rights in the family that did not exist before. And we owe that to the Supreme Council of Women under the leadership of Her Royal Highness Sheikha Sabicha bint Ibrahim, the King's wife. Now, there is an economic case actually for gender equality, and some might argue not, but some of the research shows that the higher the GDP of a country, usually higher female employed and more opportunities available for them, given the laws are there. But it also shows that potentially gender equality can add 12 trillion by 2025 to the economies of the world. That's according to the McKinsey Global Institute report. So there is a talent potential for women and girls to be tapped into. And I think it matters for women as much as it matters for men as well. So I'm happy to see men attending here, and I hope they join forces with us to really achieve this for girls, because growing up, my father never made us feel any inferior to our brothers. So we owe a lot to our upbringing and so on. But also Bahrain was a country that historically had a better sort of social structure encouraging women. There's a lot of factors affecting the gender equality, some of which are under education, but education in Bahrain with the reforms that happened because of the constitutional reforms when the King Hamad took office in 1999, we had a change of Bahrain constitution to a democratic monarchy. We have 98.4% who have voted for that constitution. Of course, the number of women voting were a little bit less than that, but it gives women a lot of rights. In 2001, coincidentally is the year where Ahliya was, inception of Ahliya, the Supreme Council of Women also was established. And they worked very hard, and we heard this morning from Ms. Bahija Delimi, the number of structural reforms, different laws and programs they've introduced in the country. It's for us, the journey is not yet there. But there remains things within pay differential and the social infrastructure and the norms and attitudes, generally speaking. Bahrain, we enjoy, as I said, a better sort of social structure and social attitudes toward women equality. But we are very happy to hear of the changes and the reforms that are happening in Saudi Arabia. This year, Manama is the capital of women in the Arab world, and it's the first time they announced such a thing. This year also we had the women empowerment, the UN Women Empowerment Prize that was initiated by Sheikha Sipicha, and it is under her name. Women are able to drive in Saudi Arabia once the laws are underway, and they'll start driving in about 6 months' time, and they can actually travel across the region. There are many laws that have come in the region. We don't claim that we are better than more developed countries and so on, but again, if you look at all the statistics from the World Economic Forum and so on, we are not faring that bad, because some of these indices don't take into account the social infrastructure and the social attitudes of countries. In MENA region, we had impressive progress for female literacy, access to education. Bahrain, in fact, had surpassed all the indices. We have access to education at all levels, post-secondary and pre-secondary, and we have one of the highest rates in the world, so we are over what we should achieve in higher education. We owe that also to some of the reforms that came because of the 2030 economic vision of His Excellency, the Royal Highness, the Prince or the Crown Prince of Bahrain. Gulf states have relatively low labor or female labor force, and again, the new laws in Saudi Arabia will empower more women to work more. They've opened a lot of so-called fields that women should not be working in. So throughout the Arab world, although we might see women lagging behind in some formal employment and some self-employment. However, our most pressing problem is the pay differential, and we've heard from Bahija this morning There's a law in the government that pay should be at par between men and women. However, income that women have might see a difference because of additional benefits or promotion or sort of chances that the men have where women more training, whatever you have. So decision-making opportunities also is a problem. Funny enough, the government is faring better than the private sector in empowering women. We have about probably a dozen women board members in Bahrain only. And in higher education institutes, whether public or private, with the exception, I can tell you, of Ahliya, women don't have higher position or leadership roles. So in both academic and administrative roles, Ahliya also is a very fast riser. So we're not only in the quality, but also in the empowerment of women. Many strategies and reform in Arab countries, but it's good to note that the private education, I think, private education, whether we have campuses that are like sort of satellite campuses like in Dubai and Qatar, or indigenous sort of higher education institutes like Bahrain, models vary. Egypt have an increase of also higher education, for example, one of the MENA regions. Now, in terms of quality, there are a lot of reforms as well with appointing the Quality Assurance Authority, the involvement of the Ministry of Education or the Higher Education Council, and elevating also the quality of education throughout, whether post or pre-secondary education. That doesn't show very well, and I just want to maybe just look at the out of the 2,180 sort of public and private institutions in Bahrain, out of public and private institutions in Bahrain, there is 2,180 people working there, out of which half only are women. So we have a problem in higher education. And usually education is a sector that women work in more than men. In higher education, we don't see that openness or access in general, out of which these in positions of authority, women don't fare as much. So our research, and we're just starting this, is to look at the parity in higher education institutes with a focus on both the pay gap and the decision making. This is the research, is complex. It's multidimensional, and we looked at things like different structural and societal frameworks that play as well. But since it is not reflected in the leadership, we are carrying a sort of qualitative research to understand from women within higher education institutes, first in Bahrain and then moving to the Gulf, what are the factors affecting them, why there seems to be no women in more high positions in education institutes. Thank you very much. Take questions.